Hello, everyone, and welcome to our special session here. This is the CNY Vitals, the Syracuse, New York Community Indicators Project, reflections on new technological approaches to support data-driven impact and participatory community engagement. This session is part of the Practitioners Perspectives Local and Regional Indicators for Community Wellbeing series, an initiative of the newly unified ISQOLS CIC Organizing Committee. Through this series, we highlight applied real-world projects that connect local community indicators work. In this session, we are introduced to the CNY, Central New York Vitals Community Indicators Project, which has been running in Syracuse, New York for over a decade. We learn how recent technological innovations have helped to connect local data better with community engagement efforts. It's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Frank Ridzi, PhD, MPA, and is Vice President of Community Investment at the Central New York Community Foundation, and is Associate Professor of Sociology at Moyne College. Frank has helped to launch and lead community initiatives in areas such as increasing community literacy, reducing lead poisoning, and addressing poverty and economic inclusion. This work is guided by a commitment to gathering community data and making it available to guide decision-making through efforts such as the CNY Vitals Community Indicators Project and the Life Needs Assessment Network of nonprofits sharing data community. Dr. Ridzi, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jill. It's good to see you all. Welcome. I'm here talking from sunny, warm Syracuse, New York. I'm saying it today because we can't always say that in this very snowy part of the country, the U.S. So I'm here today to talk a bit about the Central New York Community Foundation's project, the CNY Vitals. It is a community indicators project that, from its onset about 10 years ago, was built to help the community have better access to data about our community. And the idea is that it would be used, like many other community indicators projects, to help grant writers better write grants to serve their community, to help small nonprofits better serve the needs as they emerge, and to help community members rally around areas that are increasing in need and celebrate things where assets are growing. And so I have really three parts to what I wanted to share today, and I wanted to invite you to interrupt me at any time because this presentation is really for you, and I'm happy to shift up what I was going to say. First, I'd like to give you a brief tour of our Community Indicators website, which is it's really the centerpiece of this long-term effort. It pulls in data as many community indicators websites do, from publicly available data, government census data, and other BLS and other data. But it also, as you'll see, merges in data from local government. So things that are collected from the city school district or from the health department. And so we do work to pull in local data that is more granular for certain areas that are areas of need. So that's the first part. I want to give you a sense of what that website looks like, how it's built, how we keep it maintained. Then the next thing I wanted to do is give you a sense of the larger ecosystem for data in this community, because I think it will help you to better understand the last issue, which is with any community indicators website, you really want it to be put into use. You want different groups to be able to leverage change for improved quality of life, and hence the ISQOLS connection. We really, this is data not to just be observed and admired, but to improve quality of life. And that's sometimes the rub for local communities. How do we take this great product, a data available at your fingertips on a website, and translate that into action? And furthermore, how do we get everyone in the community involved? And so that's where the participatory budgeting and the participatory collaboration and engagement part comes in. So I start with the community indicators, move into the broader ecosystem, and talk about some of the technological advances that we've been able to build. As Jill mentioned, our Life Needs Assessment, which plugs right into our community indicators project, and then get into a little bit of how we're using it as of late to push the envelope and get as many people in the community involved. And you'll see a lot of callbacks to early stages of community indicators work, where the early indicators were actually designed by community groups rather than imposed by government or by funders. And so, we'll get into all those. But please, again, jump in at any time. So, part one, the tour. So this is our CNY Vitals website, and it's meant to be something that that draws you in with pictures of local people, and certainly, as I mentioned, snow, as well as different areas that you might be interested in. And what you'll see here is that it helps you get to know your community. It helps you pick certain areas that we want to spotlight. You can see poverty, racial equity, education, people, housing, and health and economy. But it also, you'll see on each of those, it has a action-oriented part, which is, so now what? Now that I've learned about this, what can I do? Places that I can volunteer, places that I could connect. And then we have different stories that are meant to keep it fresh. And you can see, the most recent one published in March. And so you can see these rotate through, and we invite people who are doing interesting things with data in the community, our local business development group, or you see here on the left, but you also see a public health group writing about data. Some of it is our data that we have, some of it are data that pulls you a little beyond what are on the website. So let me just give you an example of what this looks like. If you were to go to poverty, you'd see an introduction. It's this part, CNY Vitals, is meant for the non-data expert, somebody who's not perhaps immersed in data day in and day out. Not really your grant writer, not your researcher, but a community member. And you can see it introduces you to what poverty is, what it's like to live in poverty. And you can see the data are brought in and updated. And you can see these are data that we pull in from our CNY Vitals Pro website. So there's two sister websites. There's CNY Vitals and CNY Vitals Pro. This one is for the casual observer to take a look at this and then read about it, right? If they perhaps never thought about poverty before, they introduce the concepts like the feminization of poverty, and then it connects you to resources and data, and sort of gives you a lens that's influenced by some other community foundations, other foundations and communities that have put together indicators projects, where they're orienting people to this with more of a journalistic approach. So it kind of seems, these are stories. Why does it matter? Well, we'll tell you why it matters, and then we'll tell you a local story about this program called Rising Above Poverty, and this man who was part of that program and running that program, and then end with, so what can you do? You can volunteer, and here are some places you can volunteer. Here are some places you can donate. Here are some places you can take action, and ways you can join a board, perhaps, right? So each of these different areas allow you to do that, right? It introduces you, and and I'm not going to go through each page because this is something you can do on your own, but just to give you a sense of the features. So the now the data that you see here are flexible. They allow you oftentimes to sort and change from math to ELA and change school districts and things like that. And the stories, of course, we have to update those periodically, every year at least, and also the ways that people can get involved. But I want to call out that the infrastructure also has the CNY Vitals Pro, which is the companion website that is also free. It's all free and open to the public. That's more for the data professional, and this allows you to either drill in on areas or drill in on communities. And this is created with our partner Data Wheel. So this is the group that we work with that pulls all of these through APIs, through all these data routinely, and updates them in the back end, and then inserts them into the website. And so oftentimes the things in our CNY Vitals website that I just showed you are just embedded parts of this website. But this allows you a lot more flexibility, right? You can see a lot more indicators, but it also allows you to compare. Like, for instance, here, you can compare this county to this city, and you can see all these change. Or you can compare it to, another county. You can compare it to a city that's within it. You can also compare it to the country, compare it to the state as a whole. And so there's a lot of flexibility here. And I invite you to, you could even embed these and check on these. And so every year there's a process of updating these data. What I also wanted to point out is that you can do this at different geographies. And and so sometimes you might just pick a geography and start with that. and it will really pull these data in for that geography. But also there's kind of a really neat feature that lets you drill down to geographies as small as the census tract. And so what you might do is our mapping features allows you to pick different things by county or city, and really look at those in different ways. And I'll go to education here, for instance, and there you can look at it by county or a zip code or place. These are like cities or townships that are incorporated, or census tracts. And one of the great things about this is you can zoom in and say, oh wow, this is the one. This one has is the biggest need for, or no schooling completed. This is the biggest amount, right? And you can click on that, and then gives you a trend line for that area. Furthermore, once you decide I want to take action in that area, you can click on go to the profile, and now it's going to bring up all the things that you saw for the city or the county or the incorporated town or village, and it's going to bring those up for the specific neighborhood or census tract that you selected. So this is toward the end of our tour, right? But you can see if you know where that census tract is, right, which you do because you just picked it, and then you can compare that census tract to the county or the state or whatever, and get a sense for how that's similar or different. But then it has all those other things you've been looking at, the all the demographics. It's got language. It's got these are all demographics. Then it's got economy and arts. It's got housing. It's got poverty. It's got all these different things, and so all the things that you'll see in a community indicators website. And we see that quite a bit of traffic, grant writers and different groups and community members using this. So that sort of ends or wraps up the first part of my presentation, which is the tour, right? What is going on in this in our community indicators website, and then I'll move into that next key part of this, which is how do you keep it active, right? Because what we've learned over the years is to keep a community indicators website or project active, it has to be actively used, and there's probably not enough grant writers in your community to be a big enough audience, right? So how do you get a lot of people using it? So if there are any questions on just the general website, let me know now. This is a good time before I start to get into the ecosystem and how this fits into our broader thinking about data and how we start to pull in nonprofits to start using this, but also funders. All right, so I haven't heard anything yet. So I'm going to jump into our ecosystem. So this gives us a sense of the data ecosystem in our community. We start at the top with the CNY Vitals data, which is the government data. Then at the very bottom is nonprofits. So we have for a long time invested in performance management among nonprofits, helping them measure what they do. And so as you can imagine, and there's a big gap between census data and nonprofits measuring their outputs and outcomes. For instance, you might have an organization that says we do job training, and they might say we've trained 50 people, we've got them jobs. Well, that's great. You're probably not going to see the census data move, right? Not for years. And it's too small of an impact. In a census tract that has 1,400 people, 40, 50 people getting a job isn't going to move that needle. It's too small of a pebble in too big of a pond. And so what we've been investing in quite a bit is filling in the gaps. And so if you're an RBA, results-based accountability fan, you've probably thought about this. And so really this is an RBA infrastructure. We've been influenced by and collaborated with different partners like Clear Impact that have long come to community indicators conferences, and also make software that can do certain parts of this. But basically the idea behind results-based accountability is if you get not only one organization down here doing job training, but 10 organizations doing job training, now instead of 50 people getting jobs, you've got 500 people getting jobs. And if they're all doing this in the same neighborhoods, you should be able to add that together and aggregate it. And so you have to add together across those organizations. So you have to kind of have some sort of a real-time system for saying, how many people got jobs in your organization? How about yours? How about yours? Well, the system that I'm about to talk about, the life needs assessment, does that aggregation. It does that integration automatically, overnight, every day, in real time, across organizations. It starts to pull those things together. so that you can actually do results-based accountability, which became popular with a book, I think it was called Trying Hard Isn't Good Enough. So now now that's important because oftentimes people will say, well, we spent a lot of money in this community on job training, but I still look at the census data and there's a lot of unemployment or there's a lot of poverty. And so the next step is then rolling those data up, aggregated across organizations, which the system does, right? The system helps organizations do program evaluation, pre-test, post-test, needs assessments, and even joint grant applications. 3 or more organizations or 2 or more organizations could apply for a grant and run it together in the system and manage all their outputs and outcomes together. They also, as a new feature, can do their case management. They can keep track of people as they come. And one of the beauties of this system is it's free and it's free to build. So if you're interested, we're happy to show you how we did it. We built it all in G Suite, which is the Google platform. So I recommend that you actually buy an account, which is about $16 a month, but you can also build this all in the free system. And we have about 80 different programs in the community that are participating in this. So you can see, you can start to aggregate across multiple organizations. Then, of course, you're going to say, well, all these organizations are saying they got people jobs. You should start seeing that in people getting jobs in unemployment, right? So you should start to see like that and we would get data from the state. We would buy it from the unemployment, Department of Labor, and they give us they give us the unemployed numbers. And or if you're doing something with lead poisoning or something, you get the data from your county Department of Health. And so these data should bubble up. So if 50 organizations are getting people jobs, or 10 organizations are getting 50 people jobs, you see 500 people getting jobs in this, then you should start to see the unemployment rates go down, right? And eventually the poverty rates go down in those geographies. So all of this is geography based. That's how we talk from one tier to the next, to the next, to the next. And then ultimately, within a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you should start to see a trend in your community indicators overall. And so that's how the infrastructure is built in this community. It's taken us a few years to get here. But you might say, well, why do you need all those skills? Isn't the community indicators enough? Well, the example that we use is that of the GPS. And I used to use the example of triptychs. If anyone on here is old enough to remember, you could go to AAA and get triptychs and say, I'm going from Syracuse to Albany and I need triptychs. And basically they'd map it out for you and basically it would be a flip book of all these different layers of maps. You see how these are different granular layers of maps? And so this one is high level. I'm going to get on the interstate and head east, right? That's similar to this data up here. We've launched initiatives based on these data. For instance, we noticed we had higher lead poisoning in our community than neighboring counties. That was great. But so we said we need to do a lead initiative to reduce childhood lead poisoning. But what happened next was very similar to if we had a map like this that says we need to go east on the highway. But then, as soon as we decided to do this initiative, we didn't have any more data to be data-driven. And that's very similar to when you get on the highway, you have your GPS, it's taking you from Syracuse to Albany, and then all of a sudden, as soon as you're getting off the highway, you lose your signal. And you don't know where to go. You're at the end of the exit interchange, and you don't know left or right. That's how we felt. Trying to be data-driven. Here's the metaphor of driving. Trying to be data-driven. We didn't know whether we could go left or right because we lost the data, right? Then once you get off that, you're on a main street data, which is sort of like these county data, right? You could say, oh my gosh, it's in those neighborhoods, right? Once say your GPS comes back and you're like, I got off the highway, I knew I had to do lead because it told us lead was an issue. Now I need these second tier, right? The Main Street data. And now you can see that from the county health office, we found this is a map of Syracuse, right? We were able to see these darker brown areas were the ones with higher lead poisoning. So now we know the neighborhood. So now we're good. We got Main Street. So as we get into the neighborhood now, we're zooming into the neighborhoods and we lose our GPS again. So we realize, oh my gosh, we really need these next 2 layers. We need organizations that have the address level data. And they really did have people they were serving with addresses. And then we need that aggregated to the next level, the side streets, right? The back roads to get there. And so by doing that, we could start to see, well, how many organizations were collectively serving people regarding lead in those neighborhoods? And were they doing good work? We were looking to see are actual people having less lead poisoning. And then if you aggregate that, we should start to see changes here. So really, we started at the top down, and now once you do that, you have an infrastructure. We can go from the bottom back up, and you can look to see, well, if we're keeping kids from preventing lead poisoning by testing their homes before they can crawl around and put their hands in the lead dust and stick their fists in their mouth, then we should see, wow, across 10 organizations, we're preventing 30 kids each from getting lead poisoning. Then we should see a reduction in those neighborhoods, because this system all geography based, right? We should start to see the lead poisoning go down, and then our county should be better off than those other counties in a few years. And so this is also very important, because at this level, it's not it's identifiable data. It's confidential data. It has to be de-identified. And so the system that we built either connects with organizations that have a legacy system like Salesforce or something like that, or they can use this system from start to end and use this as their case management system and measure, oh, Frank came in today and he was thinking of having a child. And then so we told him about lead hazards that could be in his home. And then Frank came in again today, case management notes, and he decided to sign up. And then you can do pre-test, post-test, right? And those pre-tests, post-tests, you add them up, you aggregate them across organizations, and then we should see this happening. But once it goes to this larger network, it's de-identified, so no one can see names. So you might be saying, all right, I see what you did. That's the infrastructure. What does this have to do with people using the system more? People connecting with indicators more? Well, as you can see, you can be data driven all the way down to the ground level. But also, what about people who are on the ground level? How does this connect to the origins of the community indicators movement, where it was people from the neighborhoods coming together and deciding, this is what we want to measure. This is what's important. Why are we relying on, do you always have to rely on government data, which is mostly what the community indicators tend to be? And the government, what they measure, telling you what's important? Or what about me telling you about what's important in my life? That's the last part. And this last part is quite important to us, because it also helps helps us through a predicament in the funder community. Oftentimes, community indicators projects need funders, and funders would love solutions to their problems. And so this is a problem for funders. Historically, in the nonprofit ecosystem and philanthropy ecosystem, there is a tension between donors and the nonprofits who are trying to serve the needs of the community. The donors historically push for accountability, measures, impact. You see this in the movement, the philanthropic science movement, the scientific philanthropy movement. You see this in the Gates Foundation with their big bets to change education, big numbers. And you see this oftentimes in donors themselves, right? The trend among donors, donor advised funds and others, they want to see needles move. They want to see their money making a difference. So you have that accountability. But pushing back on the other end are nonprofits and community groups that are saying, well, that feels really oppressive. You're asking us to do too much work. You're giving us net negative grants where it costs more to administer them and measure them than we're actually getting. Why would we do that? And it feels very punitive. And you have people pushing back on things like you have people like Villanueva writing about this in Philanthropy. You have people pushing back, talking about non-numerical measures and more qualitative structures, and they're really pushing back on that feeling. And you hear the buzzword there, which is trust-based philanthropy. We want funders to trust us. So that's a buzzword. Accountability is coming from the donors, and trust-based philanthropy is coming from the people who are the nonprofits receiving the grants and people in the community who are grassroots groups who are looking for that funding. And that's a tension that has existed. And so this scenario has moved back and forth, sort of like a pendulum. What's dominating the philanthropy as a profession sector, right? So if you're in the field of philanthropy, you see it almost like the Polanyian pendulum that you hear about in early economic research between sort of liberalized economies and worker protectionist economies swinging back. It's kind of like what you see in politics, right? Swinging from the left and the right in countries. And so this sense has really existed for many, many years in philanthropy. And it's a tension, especially for community foundations and others that are actively taking donor money and actively making grants, right? Especially if you're working for that dual client model. right? So you have to find a way to address this. So one thing that caught our attention was the movement for participatory budgeting and community engagement, participatory grant making, which are very grassroots. And the idea behind that is pull people into the grant making process, empower them. So this is noodling around at the same time as thinking, well, could we empower people in the data collection process? Could people be part of it? That is where we pull in the heritage of the community indicators movement. So we're pulling in these two, all of these different things in, and this is where we are now into a project that we recently just launched. So I'm going to talk about the structure of how it works, right? And then I'm going to give you a little preview of the latest technology. As promised, the latest technology is that software that I'm talking about that's built in G Suite that really kind of helps us bridge the gap between our community indicators and our and the community data production and use. And in fact, in some of our portfolios, in some places, that you actually embed these and they become part of the same software. So excited to show you that next thing. Again, if I lose you, push me, ask questions, jump in. So I'm about to show you the idea is like, how do we go beyond nonprofits and go even deeper to residents? Pull in those community indicator, those residents into, and this is where we are with this. I'm going to share this. Oh, that's the wrong button. Sorry. I'm going to share this, the slide here, and talk about how we did this through something that's very much informed by participatory budgeting and trust-based philanthropy. It's something called our Community Insights Forum, or CIF. And it's going to start off sounding a lot like participatory budgeting type of work and participatory grant making, which is very trust-based. And then it's going to quickly add in data collection and indicators. So we start with community listening sessions, these community insight forums where we invite residents. How do you get residents? We put tables out at every public event. So whether it's the Juneteenth celebration or it's the Pride celebration or it's a local neighborhood celebration, we have tables there where we're talking about what we do, we're talking about our projects, and we're asking people. We have these walls where people put up the biggest needs, the biggest hopes and dreams, the biggest pressing issues and assets in the community. So what are the big things that they care about? And so we start by that, but also we get their contact information. We say, yeah, we're going to have this forum and we're going to invite you to this. So we start by aggregating that very qualitative feedback into word clouds and able to use AI to sort of summarize that. And then what we do is we bring together, we just had one April 1st, and we had about 150 people come. We invite those community members, and we also then invite nonprofits and others to come. And we get a really good smattering of people representing different groups, partly because we've been doing participatory grant making too, which reaches out to groups that are historically unheard, indigenous communities, other communities, people with disabilities, people from the LGBTQ community, and we invite them, and they come and they take a leadership role. And basically, it's a participatory project where every table, you break up into tables, they distill the biggest needs in their community in different sectors, and they get their voice. They get to share from their daily experience. And every community, every table boils up their top in each area, and then those go up onto poster boards around the room. And then we have Dotmocracy, where everyone goes around and they get votes in each area. And from that, we elevate not only the biggest needs in the community, but how do you measure that? What does it look like? So if it's housing, it comes down to, do you have affordable housing, or do you have reliable, safe transportation, right? So it comes down to something that is now measurable. Now you're like, well, that sounds like a census question or a survey question. So they basically not only select the needs, right, but also they select how we measure it. And what happens at the community foundation level, right, which could happen with any funder, is we then incorporate those into our needs assessment. So I'm going to show you the needs assessment, but we have, so it's as the central component is a set of questions that we refresh every 2-year cycle, where you've got these needs that have bubbled up from community discussion, and those become a sort of a community pulse survey. And so others who are probably in this room have been part of those types of pulse surveys. We've talked about that in the community indicators and local data community for some time. And quick pulses to sort of get a sense of people in the community and what's going on. And so those become the questions in that. They also become questions in our grant application. So all of a sudden, all nonprofits that are paying attention realize, oh my gosh, I get an opportunity when I apply for funding for my nonprofit to articulate how I am being responsive to those community needs identified. Not only that, because they could be one of the 80 or so programs that are running or that are participating, and it's growing all the time, they can start asking those questions of their clients during intake or whenever they reach them. They can send out their own pulse survey, and that sets them up very well for when they come in for an application. And we're looking at the application. It says you're looking to help people with public arts, and we see that's a need. It came up at the Community Insights Forum, and we see that the numbers in our community poll, the Pulse poll, which is again that real-time poll that is a convenient sample across all the organizations participating, saying that's a big need in this neighborhood. And you're saying you're going to serve this many people in that neighborhood, and you also, wow, we see you're already in contact with those people. So to a funder, community indicators, local data are gold, but a waiting list is platinum, right? So this is basically akin to a waiting list because these are not anonymous surveys. Either this organization or the partner organization that's collecting the data has the names, phone numbers, addresses. They can then go and reach out to these people and say, hey, you said you wanted some public art in this neighborhood. We're about to do it. We just got funded. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Why don't you come? And then why don't you come to a focus group? Help us figure out if you like this type of art you're thinking of. So it's really, really great. If you ask any funder, they've funded plenty of projects that say there's a need for this, there's a need for this. And then when you make the grant, the organization that received the grant said, well, we saw the need in the data, the census data or something like that, or community survey, but then we couldn't find the people. And we said we'd serve 200 people, but we only served 20 because we couldn't find them. This really is attractive to funders, and it helps also with that accountability piece, right? You want the grant to go off successfully. First part of successful is people have to show up. You have to connect with them. Then you can ask them how they like the event. So in this cycle, though, this is a very foundation-centric cycle. I want to share that because it gives you insight into our organization and how we're doing this. Then we have these speed networking sessions for nonprofits to say, hey, this is what the community said they wanted. Let's work, we're going to help you work together to do collaborative projects. As I mentioned, the data system helps you do that because you can see the data being collected about, say, public arts in the other organizations, and you can add things in ad hoc. We say, oh, well, you know what, let's ask about art installations versus performance art. And you and your partners could just add those questions in and automatically see each other's data. I'll show you the tool in a second. That's the new technology that makes this all possible. And then this happens with the review of applications. When the board members, etc., review these, they look to see, oh, well, these grants are actually addressing that need, and they can see the data as well. We have a term called the biggest reddest dot, right? The organization that is because you can actually interface your grant making software right into our life needs assessment. And so, and again, it's not proprietary. You can build one yourself. We can show you how. And basically, you can in real time look at applications that have come in, and the size of the dot is how many people said they have the need, and the color of the dot is the percent of people in that. Sorry, there's a few different ways you can do it. The simplest way to explain is the color of the dot is how many people said they need that service in the area, like light red to dark red. The darkest red is the biggest need. And the size of that is how many people the grant says they're going to serve with that need, right? So the bigger the circle, the more people they're going to serve in that need area, like public art. You can be very specific to the actual question, not just arts, but public art or performance art, or it could be trash collection, whatever you decide. And so you want to fund the biggest reddest dot. So it's very, very actionable. And board members, anyone can kind of see that. Then we award the grants, then we monitor it, because if you're already in the system, organizations don't have to do a lot of work. They don't have to create a new system. They don't have to do anything. As long as they're asking that question, as we mentioned in the pre and post with their case, as I talked about with case management, you can actually then you can monitor how the grants are doing. You can monitor how the neighborhoods are doing. And then that's the final part of this cycle. We then come back to the community in another community insights forum where we say, this is what you said. these are the data that we collected over the next years or year or 2 years with the question that we derived from what you said. And this is what we learned. And then these are the grants we made, and these are how they turned out. Tell us, what do you do next? So you see elements of human-centered design here, right? And that's built in throughout. And there's also more of that where the organizations down here can actually reach out to actual clients or people who filled out the survey who said public art, and you can pull them into focus group when you're actually designing your program. So there's a lot of flexibility here. So the idea here is in this process, all of a sudden you're seeing community indicators, which started out as something for perhaps in some communities, maybe grant writers and funders trying to figure out what areas to fund. Now you're pulling in grassroots community members to influence the real-time data collection that interfaces with this and then influences, for instance, grant making here. But you can see if it could influence program design and absolutely program evaluation, and also puts at your fingertips a program, a client management tool, right? So it starts to do more and more, and you can basically build anything, I think, in this free platform. So this I just kind of wanted to show you that because it gives you some insight into how we're using the tool I'm about to show you. And in the tool, as I show you, you'll see it's really designed toward the audience of nonprofits. We want it to be the easy button, or a button that makes things easy for nonprofits, almost like a Swiss Army knife that helps startup groups that maybe don't even have their 501c3, so the real grassroots groups, also small groups, the medium to large, and we want it to be usable for, we joke, this is a joke, nothing meant bad by it, but people in our community say, oh, it's so easy that even a board member could use it, so easy that even a CEO could use it. Nothing about their capacity, right? It's not a knock on their capacity. It just points out that they don't have a lot of time to learn the system. They don't have a time to go through and learn all these geographic information systems and how to codify things and crosswalk things. They need something that's very easy. And so you're about to see a system that is really targeted toward those audiences: board members, CEOs, program directors, case managers. Should be something that a busy case manager who has people on their case can use, and particularly program directors and case managers who get a grant and say, our core business is like helping people get jobs, but we realized we need childcare, so we got a side grant for childcare. We don't have time to build a whole nother data system. Let's use this system, right? So the program managers and the case managers, right? Program directors and case managers, but also for residents. You want residents to be able to say, what's the biggest thing in my neighborhood? What's the biggest thing in our community? Let's gather together. Let's push for this. And how has that changed? So even resident groups or individual residents can use the system and hopefully find it very helpful. So that's the overall structure. And we're going to get into then what it looks like, right? Here's the tool. So again, pause me because I am going longer than I thought, right? But I'm going to show you this and then sort of open it up for questions. This is made to be the easy button for nonprofits. Again, all free. You can build this yourself. To help nonprofits identify needs in the community, take collaborative action. That means work with other nonprofits. And I'll get into that in a second. There's two ways. Birds of a feather flock together. We call it our data dating. Birds of a feather flock together and opposites attract. And then outcomes, like measure your outcomes. And of course, as I shared earlier, these outcomes are all bubbling up for results-based accountability so that not just funders, but any nonprofit, any group of nonprofits could do results-based accountability. Any government, even neighbors that want to hold the nonprofits in their community accountable can do results-based accountability. And so basically nobody needs a license, but you do need an account. You have to give people permission. So not anyone can get there. And it's using Google. You just grant people's Gmail accounts, basically, permission. So this is how it works. And I'm going to be quick about this. This is the new version. Every version we release of this gets simpler and simpler because, yeah, it's like if you have a home and you build on all these things, it starts to look all kind of wonky. But if you if it burns down or whatever, you're building a new one, you kind of going to start from scratch. It's going to look neater. So these are the three functions: identifying needs, and you'll see for each of these there's a community version, which is the one I talked about, where the community comes together and they say these are the things we care about. So those become the questions for this year, right? Or there's make your own. You can use all these same functions and just, oh, you know what, I'm going to make my own. And you can use some of those questions and make your own. And you can still see data across organizations. So if say, Susan and I are running programs and we say, you know what, we want to do some of those questions, but we also notice there's a problem with trash pickup and howling cats, stray cats. So we're going to ask questions about that. We can do that, and we can see each other's data immediate in real time. We're never going to see each other's clients' names or phone numbers or anything that can identify them. But I'm going to say, hey, Susan, you have 40 people that need cats, that have cats howling outside, and I have 30, right? Let's do something together. That's the next step, right? So I'm going to just talk about these in concept, right? And then go back and just show you really quickly how to do that. The next step is data dating, right? We were just doing birds of a feather flock together. Susan and I both have people. Hope you don't mind. I know you, Susan, well, and me calling on you, but we both have the same issue among our clients: cats howling outside their homes. And so we're going to band together and we're going to reach out to those clients because we know their names, and Susan has her contact information for her clients, and I have it for mine. And we're going to have some focus groups and kind of say, what's the problem? What's the problem? And what do you think can do, and you can do sort of collaborative design. The other one is opposites track, right? Where, well, Susan says she has a lot of people with cats howling outside her home, and I do something with cat sanctuaries, right? And now, Jerry Maguire style, you complete me, right? You're complimentary, right? And so this tool is for that. You can do all these again with the joint data system or making your own. And then outreach to clients. You can reach out to your clients within a few minutes. I'm not going to have time to really get into all these so quickly. And then the last one is evaluate outcomes. Pre-test, post-test, time one, test, time two. When we talk to organizations, they were doing this on Post-it notes, they're doing this in Excel spreadsheets. This makes it a lot easier. And then you've got your things. These are add-ons that you could add, but how you set up your surveys, how you add new questions, and these are all your technology. So what does this look like? And this will be the last type of thing. I'm just going to show you a bit of a tour of what this looks like. I'm going to open each one so you can see what they look like. Just so you get a sense of what the interface looks like. And then I'm going to close for questions because I do think questions are very, very, very important. So the first, and of course, with everything running on my computer, it's going to take a little while for everything to open up. But so the first one is identifying needs, right? And so these are the needs, either the make your own needs or the needs that were identified during that process where the community came together and developed needs for the year. Let's see here. That one's just taking a while because it has all the maps on it. So what you can see here is it gives you a bunch of questions. And you can see, I don't know, we talk about housing. All right, do you have long-term housing you can afford? And so you pick a need, and these are again the needs that get created but for the community. And you can see, oh, all right, about 2,500 people said they had that need, and it gives you a little dashboard about how many people in the community, how red is it, how big a need is it in our community. Over time, this survey's been going on since 2017. You saw that we said 13,000 people have answered this question. You can see the trend over time. You can see how many people so far this year. We've only had about 400 people this year fill it out. You can see the responses by year. You can see month to month. You can see, I'll come back to this in a second. You can see by census tracts. You can see by neighborhood. You can see by, you can zoom in and you can say, oh, wow, all right, where is that in the community? Where is that in the community? And you can see this is another form of biggest reddest dot, right? In this sense, the bigger the dot, more people said they had the need. And the redder the dot, a higher percentage of people responding to the survey said they had the need. Well, I do housing. I do housing right there, right? You can kind of see how then the application where you say you're doing housing there can overlap, just overlay right here when you apply to the funder, and they can say, well, I'm going to fund the one that's doing housing there, probably here too, and here too, right? So, and you can also do this by zip code. You can see zip code's not nearly as granular as census tract. Census tract, this whole area, this whole shape here is really this here, right? So it's just greater. It's much more granular. But it has all the great features that you can say, where are you talking about? And you can say, I think wait, I'm gonna look at the satellite. Where is that? Oh, that's there. And you can zoom in, and you can even like do the digital walk around. Where is that neighborhood? Oh, that's where that neighborhood is. I know where it is. And you can even use this for canvassing and stuff like that, right? So it really works for grassroots groups as well. There's a diversity, equity, inclusion component here that's coming online very shortly. It was in the older version, but for confidentiality reasons, we don't transmit race, gender, sex, anything that's identity with questions over the cloud, over the internet. So that this a new process. So we get into that another time, but you can do anything that you would do that look at equity issues. I'll just close with this by saying this is also very helpful for neighborhoods, because a neighborhood could say, you know what, I'm not going to start with a need. I'm going to start with my neighborhood, right? And I'm going to come down here and to see all the needs that have ever been collected and see what is the biggest need in my neighborhood. You can pick tomorrow's neighborhoods today neighborhood. You can pick a state assembly, state senate, Congress. So if you want to pull in your electeds, you can do that. I'm just gonna, you can pick your county, whatever you want. And you can even drill it down to just years and stuff like that. But I'll just pick I'll pick downtown. So now I say, all right, now downtown, let's get together, community members. This is where community members can make it accountable. Oh my gosh, we're gonna go down here and see, wow, the biggest needs in our community are this. Do youth in your do the youth in your life have, some of these are new to me because they're just really recently created, April 1st, have access to programs and services that support success in the classroom, including access to basic needs, right? There's a good example, right? Of community generated questions. You have access to green safe spaces. Right now, has your child been tested for lead? So you now know what is big in my neighborhood, and you can drill down, and then the next step, you can data date. You can say, well, what organizations? So I don't know which one you picked there. Let's pick food just because it's here. Food. I'll say housing to stay consistent. You have long-term housing you can afford. That's the one we want. And now it's going to tell you which nonprofits here have, this is the number of people that have that need at that nonprofit. It doesn't tell you the name of people that fill out the survey. It tells you where those people are. And now you can come down here and you can grab those people or email them. You can see the names of the case managers in those organizations. And it even gives you a draft email. Oh, dear ACR Health, and you can sort of pick these. You kind of narrow it down. You could say, describe my project. I'm going to have a home building event, right? And then you can pick if you want clients or caseworkers. I'm going to pick caseworkers just for the second, right? And it drafts emails, right? Dear members of this organization, right? This is a few organization names, right? I'm gonna and it generates text, right? It puts all of them in here, right? There's an email for each of these, an email for each of these. Dear Boys and Girls Club, right? Dear Center for Community Alternative, based on the data that you collected in the life needs assessment, it says that you have 161 clients who indicated that they have a need for the question, do you have long-term housing that you can afford? We would like to propose that our organization work together to address this need, and that, right, we would like to request your help in reaching out to your caseworkers for a home build. Oh, you'd say we are doing a home building event. So I should have put something a little more substantial in there, right? A whole, I could say for a home building, for a home building event. And so basically, it pulls that in, right? Once you then pick who it's going to, right? And then you copy and paste this into an email and you reach out. And when they get the email, then they've got this case management type tool where they say, oh, you said you wanted people from my organization that needed housing. Yes, I can do that. Oh, I've got 4 minutes till happy hour. I can do that. And you pull it. And now they've got this and they can just do the download and again, send out an email to their clients quickly that says, hey, there's a home building event. Do you want to come? So they're not sharing the names of their clients with you, but they're reaching out to their clients on behalf of you. And then, of course, it comes down to evaluating. And this is just, organization, and then you can do pre-post test. I don't know. We'll just post test this organization. I don't know. It's a post test on something. And they decide what they want to do, a pre-post test or whatever, and then you look to see what the numbers, and you can limit it by year or whatever, went up or down, and you can say, oh, that's less red than before. We're succeeding, right? And you could even do this across 5 organizations. If you're doing a grant together, you could measure your stuff and do all your grant reporting together to say a national funder, all by measuring the same thing. So to wrap it up, I did go longer than I wanted, but hopefully you see now that with this type of a tool, we can start at the high level and go down, drill down all the way to nonprofits and then to people, or we can start with people and drill all the way up to funders and get them involved and hold them accountable. So it's a data system that goes up and down, but the important thing is it's flexible. It's data for the people, data by the people, and data that's definitely accessible. And so I'm going to stop there, and hopefully you see how this connects. This new technology helps with participatory work that where community indicators, local data is taking on a life of its own, and really local people can be the drivers and users of this. But also it satisfies people in the middle, like funders and nonprofits. So I'm going to stop there and open for questions, comments.
Frank, that was incredible. Your proficiency of going around from state to local to neighborhoods, at the same time, really keeping your eye on accountability and protections is amazing. And appreciate the time that it has taken for you to get everything right. I do hope we have a couple of questions because I know I have some, but I can ask you later. Does anyone have any questions for Frank? Pretty comprehensive sharing today, Frank.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it.
I'll go ahead and pop in and just take a little bit of liberty. The collaboration is really incredible, and I'm wondering how you've been able to kind of measure what types of collaboration and if the collaboration is working and the effectiveness at the end of the day of this tool to make sure that you're making the difference that you want.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. And that I think highlights how foundations are actually part of the ecosystem here. We're the ones who know, perhaps in a broadest sense, what nonprofits are looking to do because they're proposing things to us. And so we're able to get a sense of not only what they're looking to do, but who they're looking to do it with, right? And so we get a sense, and so we're also contributors to the data system, right? And eventually you'll get to see for the opposites attract, we'll be able to make those data available. Well, if you're looking for this, well, Susan's got a program like that. She's looking to put that together, and it'll be sort of interest area driven, but it'll be naturally updated because organizations are going to just keep applying for us, but there'll also be a way that they can add it themselves. And so
Nice.
that's a way to see those collaborations.
I'll pause and see if anyone else wants to come off mute and ask a question. Don't see anything in the chat. I was wondering if you've seen a difference now. I mean, accountability and the ability to tell the story that difference is being made, resources are tighter, and yet you've got this beautiful tool here. And I thought that maybe that would drive more interest to really using the tool and collaborating.
Definitely, it's very much informed by this changing federal funding landscape where organizations are really having to reinvent themselves and funders are having to make those hard decisions, which are becoming even harder. Entire areas are being defunded, right? And so funders have to decide, do we try to help those or do we or what about new innovative things that are popping up? And really we're forced to be more data driven. And this will help
Mm,
us do that. There's a call for multi-year operating dollars just to do what organizations do. Well, to do that and to choose, right? There's an opportunity cost. If we're going to fund an organization to do that, we're going to not fund another organization for multiple years. And so this becomes the platform that helps us do that in a data-driven way that isn't top-down and heavy, but really comes from community-generated concerns and needs. But it's also not just anecdotal. It could be a table that's really passionate about trash collection. But then when we see it gets broadened to the community and it's really not that widespread. So it really has those checks and balances. It's organic to the community, but there's a check and balance. And yeah, this changing time is really driving that need to really do that and to do that quickly. If the community comes up with a new set of questions, we can get that in the system overnight.
It is fantastic that you do make it available at no cost to the entire ecosystem, it seems to.
Right. I see a question in the chat. Thank you. Yes, it's at no cost. What are the next developmental priorities for the life needs assessment and the CNY Vitals? Any policy advocacy goals or research partnerships? Yeah, so absolutely. Policy advocacy is an area that works best, I think, just like data, when you have grassroots talking to organizations, talking to funders, talking to government, right? And so you really need to be able to talk and not be speculative, be concrete, and be able to back up what we say. And so if you find yourself in a meeting and where, say, the government's saying, yeah, but we don't see this, and the grassroots people are saying, yeah, but we see this, and say, all right, well, give us a couple months, we'll come back with some data, and boom, off they go, right? A small group that's not even a nonprofit could use this. And so I think that is the policy advocacy is something that there's a lot of growth here. Everything in this, really, the next step has always been from listening to the community. Nonprofits saying, we have people that we've trained in performance management, and then there's a lot of turnover. So we need something so simple that somebody can slide right into. And so the case management tool is something that's brand new. I couldn't really demo it yet, but it allows an organization to keep track of clients if they want. Visit after visit, and then add in their key outcomes that they have with them. So I think that's the next thing we envision is sort of taking off, that we're going to have organizations wanting to use that, because it's very expensive and costs a lot of time to launch a new case management system for clients.
Great question. Great answer. Anyone else?
Do I think this can be replicated in other cities? Absolutely. We were actually inspired by other communities that had community-wide data systems where multiple organizations were all feeding in. The difference between this system and those systems require like a data manager for the community, and they cost a few $1,000,000 to set up, right? That was the first difference. We wanted to build this all in freeware kind of approach. The good thing about paid Google is it's HIPAA and FERPA. You can get it HIPAA and FERPA compliant and stuff, so you can really also interface, pull out of the system, just do an API that pulls out, so organizations don't have to use a new interface. They don't have to do double data entry. That was big for us. Yes, it can be replicated. Other communities also had a data guru or data mastermind at the front, data manager, and they could see the client level information at every organization, which then requires an MOU with legal, because you're actually sharing confidential information. What we decided was, what about something grassroots where you don't share anything confidential? The only thing that leaves your personal account, right? And really, this is the case. I can't see anything confidential. If somebody held me up at gunpoint, there's no way they could get anything confidential out of any of the participating organizations from me, because I don't even know it. What happens is it de-identifies the data before it shares to the system. And so that's really the great thing. The downside is you're not having unduplicated counts, but we're not looking for a perfect count. We're looking for actionable data. You'll find out they're duplicated when they get invites from two organizations to come to the same event, right?
Mhm.
Or those organizations can sign an MOU, right? A legal MOU, and share. Once you find out, oh, Susan, you have people who need stray cats and I do stray cats, then we can sign an MOU and share data, right? But this just helps you get to that point. And it's broad, right? But oftentimes what holds up a community from getting there is the legal. I've seen communities where they have grant money, they're ready to go, but one organization won't sign the MOU to share their confidential information with another organization. Here you avoid that. You don't share anything confidential. You only share what I feel comfortable putting on a billboard. Somebody came to my organization today from this census tract where 4,000 people live, and they needed childcare and housing. You can put that on a billboard, right? It's not until you aggregate it that across organizations that you start to see the trend. Yeah, this can be replicated. In fact, we are just moving from 1 county to 5 counties as we speak.
Really appreciate all of the different examples of the ways that people can collaborate can work together. I'm just wondering on the big picture, Frank, and yes, I've known you for a while, so I can ask you that. Do you see that that their ability to reach, to make a difference, it has grown because your partners and you are leveraging in a different way?
I do in many ways because I see a lot of people using the earlier version of the system. This new Community Insights Forum process where we integrate, we just launched it just now, right? So it's brand new. So we'll be able to come back and talk about how that turns out. Took a while to interface with our grant making software, right? I'm happy to be done doing that. But a lot of this is inspired by the work. I was at a Community Indicators Consortium conference many years ago, and people from the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank came up after my presentation, said, "You got to read our book, right?" And maybe many others got that book too. And a chapter in there by somebody who's now at the New York Federal Reserve Bank about complex adaptive systems really made us think. It was about pay for performance and community impact and complex adaptive systems, things that have systems and networks that have rules that let them run on their own, don't have to be orchestrated by a large group of people. And like like ants, they don't talk, but they can climb across a chasm on each other's back. T cells, right? They coagulate and they save us, right? Or they attack pathogens. They're in a complex adaptive system. There are known decision rules, and that makes things happen well. Kind of like people talk about the economy with the invisible hand, right? And so in this system, we're trying to build that in. Well, community members who want something should speak up, and they should hold people accountable to get that. That's a simple decision rule. I should speak up and get it. Nonprofits who want foundations who want to be responsive should incorporate that into their process. Well, it's now part of the system. Nonprofits who want the money, well, that's a no-brainer. That's going to be the priority because the community is saying they want it. So, and then community members can see, and everyone can see how it's turning out. So it's sort of a system where those similar to an economy, but it's an economy for good, economy for quality of life. There's money exchanging hands, donors and others for sure, but it's all orchestrated around grassroots needs and how those boil up and connect. So that's what really kind of inspires it. And so that's when we'll really see, well, if people are using those, they learn those simple decision rules. Oh, yeah, that's how I maximize our grant money. That's how I make sure that the funders fund what I want. That's how I make sure that we address the needs in the neighborhood where they are the need. That's how I use that grant money efficiently to get more grant money because I was able to find clients because I knew where they were. Simple decision rules.
I see Jill is jumping in. I just want to say, on behalf of this practitioner series and on behalf of the community indicator approach, it's amazing to have been able to accomplish both, to have really good collaborative, powerful systems level data at all levels, and still keep your eye on the community participatory process and protect them and keep them safe. So you have two last sentences, Frank, before you turn it back over to Jill.
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Looking forward to seeing you all in Kentucky. Very, very excited.
Absolutely. We'll be there. Jill, over to you.
Thank you. Well, before I take it away, Frank, I'm wondering if you can speak to the panel presentation that you have lined up for Kentucky, just as a little bit of a promo for that.
Yes, absolutely. We have a bunch of communities that are running their local data projects, community indicators projects, if you will, and they're going to be talking about their processes and how they do the nuts and bolts. And so you can get to see the inside of very different structures. And I mentioned a little bit of ours and how we work with Data Wheel, but there are others working with CGR and others even doing it themselves. So you can kind of see, you'll get a sense if you're interested in creating one of these initiatives in your community, how to do it, how much it costs, and looking forward to some great colleagues that will be there presenting.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, just as a reminder, and well, first of all, thank you, Frank, for a great presentation. As someone who works in the nonprofit space, it's nice to see practical, low-cost tools for nonprofits to collaborate, to measure outcomes, and to inform funding. So that's always something that's very, very valuable. I look forward to thinking about maybe potential opportunities for research partnerships to validate impact and explore how maybe the model can be adapted and scaled to other communities. I think there's a lot of potential for that. So more to come from you, I'm sure. Thank you to you and to everyone else for participating. As a reminder again, we have our upcoming conference in Lexington, Kentucky, August 11th through the 14th with the pre-conference workshop, which I mentioned earlier, focused on community indicators research on August 10th. We'll be sending everyone the link to this session as well as the link to that conference. So thank you again. With that, Susan, thank you for facilitating the Q&A. And thank you again, Frank. We'll see you all soon, I hope.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.